Hello, hello, hello. This is Jamie Rhines with the Denied Podcast, where we discuss the different issues that tow companies are going through. My guest today is Cortland Yates with Yates Boys Towing and Environmental. They operate out of the state of Missouri, where they're having some normal issues with regards to how to collect a invoice, and their state is trying to push some legislation that would negatively affect tow companies. We want to give any tow company the opportunity to discuss different legislation going on in their state, so that we can kind of move forward in the understanding of what tow companies go through, how an industry is somehow always connected to predatory when that is, like any other industry, a small percentage of companies that do the wrong thing. And I don't think that you could deny the fact that every industry has bad actors in it. But for some reason, with regards to the tow industry, it seems like anytime somebody doesn't like a bill, they call it predatory. So, Cortland, if you'd like to discuss kind of what's going on in Arizona, we can get into some of the aspects of trying to collect the invoices, and the difficulties that you guys run into with that a little bit later on in the game. But as far as legislation that's going on, you had said that it's temporary blocked, or the tow association had basically kicked the can down the road for a year. But what do the legislative requirements look like?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first off, glad to be here and to shed some light on some issues that we've been having with local legislation and stuff. I know that it's good to get this out there and explain to other people the problems that we're seeing, and we're noticing that it's just getting worse. And underwriting is even more not in our favor. So I think that it's good to get this out to the masses to let people know the problems that we do face. But yeah, so this last year, we had a House bill proposed and actually a similar bill proposed in the Senate, um, that was pretty one-sided. It was basically just legislation for against tow companies. It included a lot of language that would um, that, like I said, was just one-sided. So, for example, some provisions that they wanted added was that we had to release truck, trailer, and cargo if there was a contest on our bill, the overall price, and stuff like that, with actually no review or anything like that. They proposed a review board, but the people that they suggested that would be a part of it, only one of which of those five people that they proposed would have been an advocate for the towing and recovery side. So it was basically just pretty one-sided, something that we saw that would almost never go in our favor. We'd be starting behind the eight ball. Even if we turned in an ethical bill, it would be easy for them to skew, or people that don't really have an idea of what's going on, and what all it takes to do a cleanup, voting on it. So we would end up having people that were uneducated and stuff making the decisions for the tow company.
Okay. And that brings up an interesting point because, well, I got a couple thoughts on this. The people that speak on behalf of tow companies, I don't know how they've allowed this misconception of what a tow company does go on for as many years as they have. They're good at collecting money from tow companies. I really just don't understand how the tow associations and these lobbyists working on behalf of the tow companies don't have a better voice out there, on behalf of you guys, because contesting the bill happens every single time a claim's adjusted. And we work on collecting your invoices at Tucker Albin, and I probably have 500 clients at this point in time. So we kind of collect all across the country, and Canada, which has the same issues, which tells me insurance does the same north of the border as it does down here in America, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Cargo is very interesting because cargo, if they allowed cargo or any equipment to be released, probably prevents the only way that you guys actually can get paid in full.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
we all know Burt tractor and trailer, cargo write off, how often does an insurance company respond?
Yeah, never. No, that's the ones that you hate to get that phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning, for a burnt tractor trailer, knowing that you have to send your equipment, $2 million worth of equipment out with skilled operators, trained operators, that obviously need paychecks and stuff too. So you send all these guys out with the expectation that you're probably not going to get paid. I don't know any other industry that has to operate that way. And certainly it wasn't as big of a deal in the beginning, but more as time goes on. And like I said, underwriters are starting to get pretty clever with their language and stuff like that. We've noticed it happening more and more, and even on stuff that there is a little bit of value, um, after the accident. If it's more financially advantageous for them to just leave the truck and trailer, pay off the broker or the receiver, and just leave it with the tow company, that's happening. So sometimes I've noticed that it's basically whatever helps the bottom line of the insurance company more is what they're deciding to do, overall. And ultimately, we've noticed that we end up getting a short end of the stick on the deal.
Yeah, and because we'd had a claim, what was it, last year? I believe it was the cargo was coils of steel,
Yeah.
and and I don't even think that I think it would have been financially advantageous had the insurance company actually adjusted the claim efficiently to have paid the tow bill and got the cargo back to the shipper, but the
Yeah.
insurance company chose rather than do that to pay the entire limits of the policy minus a very small amount and send you the remaining balance rather than send undamaged cargo back to the shipper. So that always really annoys me, and it registers when they talk about holding anything hostage with regards to a tow company, because it feels like they think that you guys are doing things, I guess, that aren't above board, when the reality is if you don't have any kind of leverage, it's impossible to get a bill paid. And even when you do have what you would believe is leverage, if they kick the tires down the road too much, there's too much storage involved, they'd much rather just pay the shipper, tell you that they've exhausted limits, and then you're left with another unpaid balance or partial payment on a recovery.
Yeah, and that one thing, that claim that you referenced with the steel coils, they drug their feet on it, the insurance did, and then they ended up paying it out, like not to me, to the receiver or whoever it was that ended up getting compensated for the load. So nobody wanted these coils that had fallen off a semi trailer and rolled down into the ditch. But then I don't know if I told you about this, but the agent called me later and wanted to trade the coils for a portion of the recovery bill. And so basically no party involved wanted these coils, but then the insurance thought that I should swap my bill for them. And it's one of those things, it's like everybody acknowledged that there's no value left to this cargo, but then they wanted me to assign value and take it off my recovery bill. And that's just something that seems outlandish.
Well, yeah, and it also allows them an opportunity to kind of double dip. And
Yeah.
then you're taking a loss, and they're actually profiting again off of something that you had to hold on to. And the insurance company could have acted in good faith and chose not to, which is, why this whole hostage scenario it's comical at best. And anytime,
For
like you
sure.
said, there isn't any value, then the insurance company games really persist. So one of the things, when you're talking about that and these, I guess, catchphrases or words that insurance companies like to beat their chest with that make the tow companies sound bad, is that the voice that's there for the tow company isn't contesting it. Predatory towing to me, or inflated bills, I'd like to talk about for a minute, because all of the companies, 500 tow companies that I work with, outside of a couple conglomerates where they have a more corporate type structure with CEOs and COOs and stuff like that, any family owned business, and normally this is something that's been for generations going back and forth, they end up in this scenario where the owners, the family, you guys are out there at 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Mhm.
The companies that are actually accusing you of inflating these bills, their profit margins 2 to 3 times what your profit margin is, and you're
For
out in
sure.
the field, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
the messaging on behalf of the tow companies, I don't know how it could get so far, or the apple could fall so far from the tree that they're still allowed to do this. And I think that the root of it is money. My favorite saying is you just can't out money the insurance industry. They have a network of ways to donate to get the politicians that they want in office. These are billion-dollar corporations. They have a network of attorneys fighting on behalf of them because uh, uh, a rule or regulation in Missouri that gets passed allows them to argue that across the country. And now every time I pick up the phone to collect a tow invoice as somebody that does that for a living, I'm going to hear how, you know, that the state law in Missouri doesn't allow that to happen, or the situation in Virginia where they'd gotten dinged on a lawsuit with regards to admin fee, even though that admin fee dealt with personally owned vehicles and not commercial wrecks. And again, it's a matter of opinion or how it's properly argued, because the admin fee to me is the all the additional hours that are put in after a job's been completed to get the bill collected, whether it's letting people on the yard to inspect, whether it's spending 100 hours contacting the multiple insurance companies that you have to do, getting them the information that's needed. You have
Mhm.
to have a person in the office that's able to do that. That specifically, you're talking, about a salary right there for one individual just to deal with the
For sure.
insurance companies. And in light of all that, somehow the tow company gets the negative review, right? And
Yeah.
it's like doing it's like calling in an ambulance and then having buyer's remorse, and then telling the ambulance company when you get the invoice, hey, I could have done Uber for $100 instead of this $4,500 bill.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing that we run into. Like some companies in our area have started doing as far as insurance goes. They will respond to an accident, recover the truck, and there's only a few times that this has happened in our area, but the responding company will recover the truck and tow it back to their tow yard, and then they spend the next 2 or 3 days confirming insurance coverage while the trailer and cargo lay there in the ditch. What ends up happening, and what has happened in a few situations, is that trailer laying there in the ditch ended up they didn't have coverage for it, so it got left there, and then MoDOT, our road department, ended up having to take bids from tow companies to come out and clean up the cargo and trailer, which I'm sitting in a situation where I can't really blame the tow company for going out there or for not going out there when they know they're not going to get paid and cleaning up that mess, because I understand the costs incurred whenever they do that. But then also, it's a tough spot to be in whenever you realize that it's ultimately falling on the taxpayer to clean up this truck and trailer accident. Um, so that's one of those deals where, you mentioned insurance policies and stuff like that. I don't really know. That's basically the tow company combating underwriters, where they end up putting asterisks in there that make it where there's not coverage. That's kind of their way of fighting back, policy limits and stuff like that. But a solution for the problem also can't be leaving this stuff on the side of the road or having the taxpayer foot the bill because a trucking company wanted to only have the minimum required insurance.
Yeah, the interesting part about that is if you look into that, and I can tell you, obviously, I came from a background of working with insurance companies, getting tow invoices reduced, and it didn't take long to realize, well, hold on, if I and I think it was Phelps Environmental out of North Carolina. And I'd had a client that I was working for on the insurance side, and I believe they had like 4 or 5 incidents with Phelps in a very short period of time. And they were challenging every invoice, and they were asking, basically for them to bend over and take what they wanted to give them, and telling me, tell them I got limits, and tell them that the policy's exhausted. And I'd ask them as a third party representing someone, you have responsibilities different than if you're that party. But as a reminder, an insurance company does have a legal obligation to act in good faith. So I don't understand how they're able to get away with this. But they would just tell me, well, that's not the point. Just tell them that.
Yeah.
And so they're shrouded in this secrecy. And I know every insurance company spent all of 25 figuring out what their highest risks were. And I guarantee it's written out of the underwriting via endorsements or via exclusions for 2026, right? So they insure through risk assessment their profit margin. And as an emergency roadside cleanup company, your profit's never guaranteed. And I remember back when we first got started working together, I think you had a couple claims that didn't pay, and they were very large claims. And any tow companies, a few claims not getting paid where they got to carry that overhead for a long period of time away from having to close the doors or to sell out to some other company. And so, this is just the first podcast, and I want to get more deeper. I want to get other participants in to talk about it. But the fact of the matter is that the understanding that people have, like, people don't think to themselves that they make it to work on time because of a tow company. But I can guarantee you, if you're making it to work on time, it's because of a tow company. Somewhere throughout that evening, a vehicle or truck got into a wreck, they cleared the roadway. That's the reason you make it to work. People don't think when they hit the tap water, and you guys do environmental cleanup, and I've been involved in some serious cleanups with you. And the reason that you put that tap water on and it's not toxic is because of a tow company, because they've done that cleanup. They've removed the contaminated soil so it doesn't get back into our water table. And then the other thing is the sheer cost of holding on to the value of assets that you guys have to purchase, and the labor and everything to be on standby.
Yeah.
Because that goes unrecognized. I always tell the insurance companies when they call me and they're complaining, I could have got this rate over here. You know how it is with third party companies, and I don't want to name them and end up dealing with a lawsuit, but there's plenty of them out there. And surface level, they're able to offer a lot of great rates. The only problem is you got to book them 6 to 8 weeks ahead.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing. Emergency response is probably one of staffing guys, that skilled guys too. I mean, it's easy to go out and find a grease monkey to throw in a truck in an old truck. But at the end of the day, to have a guy that you wouldn't mind to load up your wife and kids at 2:00 in the morning when they're broken down on the side of the road, to find an individual like that, you have to pay them what they're worth, or they're not going to stick around, and based on cost study, it cost me about 9 months of a guy's salary to replace him. So when you do find a guy, you need to pay him well enough to keep him around, because if not, it's so expensive to replace them overall that it's just not feasible. So yeah, having guys that can respond to emergencies and operate high dollar equipment, and just people that you trust, is part of having an operation, a professional operation that can actually do these big jobs. It's one of those deals where we can't throw anyone in $1 million truck and expect them to go out there and operate it if they haven't had any type of training, or they're just some random, like I said, grease monkey off the side of the road.
Yeah, that's an interesting point as well, because then you get into how many people are willing to get their butt up at any time during the middle of the night to go out there and to do the work, right? And I have a couple interesting statistics. So a bare bones ambulance, believe it or not, costs the same amount as a medium wrecker. And I think nationwide for a single tow for a POV is somewhere between $50 and $100. And the average call for an ambulance is, I believe, $4,500. Right?
Mhm.
80-ton or above rotator costs as much as a evac helicopter.
Yeah, you're looking at $2 million. Yeah,
The average call out for medical evacuation is around $45,000, and you guys have 2 to 3 times the value of that equipment out there over a 8-12 hour period of time, and they're complaining about how large the bill is. And I always say to that, then predict when your carrier is going to get in an accident and book these people ahead of time,
yeah,
because it's not the same. If I booked everything ahead and I knew I'm getting paid 90-95% of the time, I can price that in. But as an emergency roadside solution, you may get paid half of those, in a
yeah,
timely manner, half of them paid in full. And then the other 5 out of 10, you may not get paid. It's a fatality. You're getting paid, but it's pennies on the dollar. There's, the exclusions, the limits, and it forces a tow company to have to sue. And you can't sue every time somebody gets into an incident and stay profitable as a business.
yeah. And you mentioned it whenever we first started working together, and um, we went on a stretch there where we had probably our first 3 or 4 claims together ended up not paying out. And I'm just fortunate that I'm a third generation tower, or because if that was me just trying to get started and stuff like that, because we met shortly after I took over the company, my brothers and I took over the company from our dad. I couldn't imagine if I was just starting up and I had just bought my first semi wrecker and I was trying to make my insurance payment and stuff like that, and then straight out of the gate I had 3 or 4 non-payments and stuff. If I wasn't third generation, you and I wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. I mean, it just
Yeah.
would have made such a mountain for me that there's no way that we could have climbed it.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing, and I appreciate your time. We'll wrap it up here, but if the tow industry was as abusive and as profitable as it is, then you would be able to start a new one with new equipment in a new location, and that's an impossibility at this point in
For
time,
sure.
with what it costs to insure, with how expensive, even on the equipment side. I feel like they've taken advantage of tow companies because they hear the chatter that the bill is really high. A decade ago, when I got into this, I don't even know if Miller had a $1 million piece of equipment at that point in time. And then they came out with the 100-ton, right? And then
And 100, yeah.
yeah, then all of a sudden now, can't remember what it was the last tow show I went, but the base model is like 1.4 or something.
Yeah,
You got all these
you-
vendors taking advantage of the scenario. The insurance companies taking advantage of the scenario. But a business that's making money hand over fist, then you'd have new businesses with new equipment popping up all over the place. And you can't do that. You got to have a stable of equipment paid off.
For sure, yeah. And you've got like you mentioned, like going out and doing the work and stuff like that. So I'll have the insurance CEOs, they're bringing in, 2 million, 4 million a year, whatever their annual salary ends up being. But then they turn around and tell us that a $35,000 recovery bill is what's inflating insurance premiums. And I just the math isn't mathing whenever you look at the bottom line. What's going in and what's coming out. I have a hard time believing that a recovery bill is inflating insurance premiums across the country.
That's not the reality of it. And the reality is too, if they charge a reasonable premium to be able to pay these bills, then they can't limit the risk, so they don't even want to go there.
Yeah.
They don't want to pay the premium that it takes to pay a tow company in full. And they want to continue along this path to say the invoice is inflated because then they get away with not acting in good faith. But the bottom line is over the last decade, through limiting policies, through these denials, and I'll get more into that in the next episode. They've created the high invoices. They complain about it, and it's pretty rich. That they have billions of dollars to pour into fighting tow companies, to changing legislation, and yet they're always creating this narrative that the tow companies are the bad guy.
Yeah, that we're driving it up. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I agree with you that there are some bad actors in the bunch. I've seen some recovery bills that shocked me, something that I would have a hard time justifying. But also, I don't know what the next guy down the road. I don't know what it costs him to operate. So, based on the surface level, I mean, there's really not much I can say about it. I know what it costs for me to operate and the expenses associated with my business and what I need to have out of that. So I feel like in a way, and I have, with you especially, we have a pretty good collection rate, but I do know that I feel like I turn in reasonable recovery bills and I still face pushback just because there are people out there inflating tow bills and stuff. So it's one of those deals where, yeah, it's kind of getting slain because because you're a part of a group, and it's a small majority, or it's a small fraction of companies that actually do that, but it's making it harder on all of us that do bill ethically.
Yeah, and that could also, you don't know, they could have a $30,000 a month insurance payment on each piece of equipment. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
So I could look at my own bill and go, oh wow, that guy's a lot higher than me, but you don't know how much, if he's got, he's dealing with a majority of his equipment on loan, his new building on loan, and there's nothing wrong with expanding or building a business and charging what it takes to profit. And I feel like because everyone's fighting this thought that there are bad actors, but there's one thing, and I'm going to end the podcast with it, but there's one thing that I can tell you that's completely the truth. Every insurance company acts bad, probably a lot more than they should be. So
Yeah.
you have a couple bad acting tow companies, but every insurance company acts bad. And
For
it's
sure.
because in order to get out of or to mitigate their losses, they're denying or not paying legitimately owed invoices in full on a regular basis. And in the industry where they realized, oh, if I send a TPA out there, or if I keep my driver out there and they actually acknowledge or verify the equipment and people were used, then I got to pay the bill in full. Their answer to that is stop sending a TPA out there and instruct their the driver, the carrier, not to stay on scene so it can't be verified. That's telling me who the shady party is.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. This wraps up episode 1. Thank you. I got work to get back to do for you guys as well. Anybody that does need help with collecting invoices or is dealing with a short or non-payment, please look at towcollect.com. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time.
You bet. Thanks for your time. Have a good one, Jamie.
All right. Bye.